Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the September 16 meeting of the Ann Arbor City Council. If you're able, please rise and join us for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would our clerk please call the roll of council?
Councilmember Dish?
Here.
Councilmember Harrison?
Here.
Councilmember Song? Absent. Councilmember Watson?
Here.
Councilmember Medina?
Here.
Councilmember Ghazi Edwin?
Here. Also, I'm attending this meeting virtually, and I'm currently located in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I'm attending this meeting virtually due to a serious knee injury that prevents me from bearing weight on my leg.
Mayor Taylor?
Here.
Councilmember Iyer?
Here.
Councilmember Ackman?
Here.
Councilmember Briggs?
Here.
Councilmember Cornell?
Here.
We have a quorum.
May I have a motion, please, to approve the agenda? Moved by Councilmember Watson, seconded by Councilmember Harrison. Discussion of the agenda. Perhaps I may have a motion, please, to flip the two introductions such that we have the proclamation welcoming visitors from our sister city, Tübingen, Germany, before our much anticipated update from the Downtown Development Authority. May I have a motion, please? Moved by Councilmember Medina, seconded by Watson. Is that friendly to the body? It's friendly. Further discussion of the amendment of the agenda as amended. All in favor? Opposed? The agenda is approved. Do we have communications today from our city administrator?
No, Mayor.
Well then, we do have the aforementioned introductions. First, a proclamation welcoming visitors from our sister city, Tübingen, Germany. Meet me up at the front, please.
The front is here.
Right here. Come on up, everybody. So, the camera is up there.
Oh, okay.
So, as many folks know, Ann Arbor has a number of sister cities, but our longest-standing sister city relationship is with the city of Tübingen, Germany, first from 1965. We are so incredibly excited to have these fine folks from Tübingen come visiting to us here in Ann Arbor. Some of us, both on staff, city, and of course the community, were able and so fortunate to go out to Tübingen last year. We learned a great number of things. We were inspired to take a little bit of Tübingen home here in Ann Arbor. For my part, I took bicycles and Spätzle, and it's made my life all the better. And so, it is my great pleasure to introduce and welcome Lord Mayor Boris Palmer with a proclamation declaring that today is the Tübingen and Ann Arbor Sister City Day, and encouraging all members of our community to welcome our delegation and to celebrate in it. And now I'd like to turn the mic and the floor over to Lord Mayor Palmer and the rest of the team. And so, Lord Mayor Palmer, there you go.
Thanks very much. Dear colleague, dear councillors, dear citizens, thank you very much for your hospitality and the wonderful program. We really enjoy being here, and especially the blue sky is wonderful since we come from very cold period of weather at home. It's a great time being here, and of course to express our great thankfulness, we brought something to even export more from Tübingen to Ann Arbor. Not only does the mayor drive bicycle now, but he will have a wonderful bell now for his bicycle to ring. And the bell says Tübingen goes blue,
yes.
Like Ann Arbor goes blue.
Yes,
in case you don't wear a helmet, you can wear this wonderful Tübingen goes blue hat.
Excellent.
And then for the city administrator and the mayor, we have something that council may consider. The Tübingen Council decided to introduce a new tax on one-way stuff, plastic, like cups and dishes like that, and therefore this has become very valuable because it's reusable. So we have a reusable burger box, hamburger, cheeseburger, whatever you like. And these are the special burger air conditioning dots here. So this is for burgers, this is for any other stuff. And we also brought stones from the river Neckar that flows through Tübingen. You even can eat them. And some more memories to share. So may that inspire you as the cycling trip did. And Milton, we have the same for you. And since staff normally has to drink a lot of coffee, we brought you the reusable coffee cup as well. Thanks very much for having us. And have a good time with the reusable stuff from this.
Let's have this calendar.
Oh,
I'm sorry. This is also for you. Some pictures to remember.
Thank you very
Your time
much.
in Tübingen. This is a calendar that's valid for every year.
Excellent.
So you can have it in the
Valid for
office
every-
for the rest of
Oh,
your
yes.
term.
Perfect. All right.
Or leave it for the rest of the administration.
It's a deal. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Delight.
Thank you. We really liked it.
So far, so good.
Thank you, Christopher.
A delight.
Okay, you proceed.
Thanks a lot. Oh, don't forget.
That's mine.
Excellent. I could say it from the chair, but I will say it from here. You have the floor.
Thank you.
Waiting for Marcus to bring up my presentation. Oh, there we go. Great, thank you. Well, thank you everybody for having me here tonight. I wanted to share with you tonight an update on the downtown area circulation study. And as a reminder, this study is a collaboration between the DDA and City Transportation. And this is one of the major planning efforts that's underway right now that will be informing the DDA's new development plan. So we anticipate having recommendations coming out of this study that you will see in our new development plan, which we hope to have to you for consideration by next summer. So let's see if I can get this right this time. Yep, okay. This project has four main components. We are looking at expanding our downtown bikeway network. We are looking at transit improvements. We are looking at two-way restoration of 5th and Division. And the last component has changed since we began this study. So we began this study with the fourth component of looking at event streets. After our public engagement sessions in March and after meetings with many stakeholders, we recognized, we recognized that we needed to broaden this piece of the study. So we are now looking at, in addition to event streets, the public realm as a whole. And that's what I'm going to focus on tonight is reviewing with you some of the items that are coming out of the public realm section of this study. So when we're talking about the public realm and infrastructure investments, the recommendations that will be coming out of this study are related to street design, enhanced public spaces, placemaking and wayfinding, and infrastructure investments that can support those seasonal street closures and the activation of those streets. So with street design, we're looking at flexible streets. We are looking at curbless and shared streets. And I'll pull out Liberty Street as a good example of a potential project that we see kind of rising to the top. So when you think about Liberty Street, it is really the main connector from the State Street neighborhood down to the Main Street neighborhood. That street has not been touched in a long time. If you are walking along Liberty, I would suggest you notice the various widths of the sidewalk. It can be block to block. Sometimes it can be from one side of the street to the next. There are also some kind of funky lane configurations on certain blocks of Liberty Street. So we really believe that Liberty Street is ready for a major infrastructure project, and that could be really transformational for our downtown. So I would suspect that Liberty Street would be a project that would make it into our development plan. Enhanced public spaces. So we are looking at the farmers market, which I know the city will be undertaking a capital project in the next couple of years. Sculpture Plaza, Liberty Plaza, all of these spaces are spaces that we are seeing as opportunities to really maximize their use. Right now, those spaces are somewhat minimal in the elements that are in the plazas. We have some examples up here on the screen. There are lots of fun and interactive things that we can add to encourage families, to encourage young people, all people. We want to give people reasons to linger downtown. In addition, we are also looking at reclaiming some of our public space. And I'll use the southwest corner of State Street and North U as an example. The public right-of-way on that corner actually extends well beyond the sidewalk. It's really what we now consider part of the diag, and that's actually has quite a bit of public right-of-way. So this is space that we're looking at for a potential new plaza area that the State Street District could use for activation. Placemaking and wayfinding. So DDA is taking a two-pronged approach with placemaking and wayfinding. Through the circulation study, we are looking at infrastructure investments that will connect neighborhoods to parking structures, connect neighborhood to neighborhood, and separately from that, we are also undertaking projects through a new public art and placemaking program the DDA board approved in June. This program is called Elevate. We're actually underway. We're working closely with the Ann Arbor Art Center. We actually have 2 RFPs already out the door for what I think are some exciting projects. And I'm going to talk a lot more about the Elevate program at our joint working session in October. And then finally, for seasonal streets and activation, we're looking at investments, infrastructure investments that the DDA can make to make those seasonal street closures easier for organizations to close, to activate. Mainly barricade improvements. I think we can all agree that our current barricade situation is less than ideal. Main Street Area Association has actually done a fabulous job wrapping those type 3 barricades. They look a whole lot better, but we're still dealing with those PVBs that you see kind of strewn to side on the closures. So we are looking at many different options. There are options related to seasonal closures versus long-term. So our hope is that out of this study, we're going to come out with some solid infrastructure investments that will support neighborhoods who are doing these seasonal or longer-term street closures. So navigation and safety, this is talking about two-way restoration on 5th and Division. This is actually a project that has been on the DDA's radar for quite a while. We had, in our CIP, we had a study for studying this two-way restoration on 5th and Division for quite a while, and it got incorporated into the circulation study. From our public engagement in March and from our stakeholder meetings, I can tell you that there's really broad support for this project, but it's a complicated project. This is not a project that we're going to see in the next few years. This is a long-range project. There are a lot of challenging intersections, and I would also point out that some of this project area does extend beyond the DDA's current boundaries. But if I were a betting woman, I would say that this is going to be included in our development plan. This is an important project. And then our bicycle system. So recommendations coming out of the study for extending our current downtown bikeway loop include an extension of the Catherine Street Bikeway, the Division Street Bikeway, Broadway Plymouth Side Path, North Main and Summit Connector, and then some traffic calming improvements on Washington Street. The dotted lines indicate those project areas, and much of those project areas does extend beyond the DDA's current boundaries. And then finally, transit enhancements. We, of course, have been working really closely with the AAATA and their long-range plans. And on this, I would just say that our overall approach is to reserve street space on key transit corridors for future improvements. So I think there's still a lot of study to be done and work to be done both on the AAATA side and on our side. But in the short term, what we're looking at is transit improvements on, right now, 4th Ave and 5th Ave are rising to the top from what we've heard from AAATA. So looking at signal improvements, transit signal prioritization, allowing buses to queue up ahead of other vehicles. And finally, I would invite you all and the public to join us at our next downtown planning open house. That includes circulation study and the downtown piece of the comprehensive plan. It will be October 23rd at the Downtown Public Library, and I hope you all can make it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We now come to public comment reserve time. Public comment reserve time is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to council and the community about matters of municipal interest. To speak at public comment reserve time, one needs to have signed up in advance by contacting our city clerk. Speakers in all instances will have 3 minutes in which to speak, so please pay close attention to the time. Our clerk or the time clock will notify you when 30 seconds are remaining and when your time has expired. When your time is expired, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor. Our first speaker today is Jennifer Hall.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I want to speak about DC3. I want to thank City Council for taking the time to signal to the public their intent on what the city would do with the rebate if the county mental health and safety services millage is renewed in this November. Back in 2017, City Council did the same thing, and I wanted to make sure the public understands that that is really to be helpful to the public so that they understand what they're voting on when the item comes up for vote on the ballot. And for people who don't know, you can actually go to the city's website, and there's a place where you can look up old agenda items, you can look up minutes from City Council, and there's a resolution back in 2017, Resolution 17-261, that was adopted by City Council. It was also an intent of how to expend the money, and back then the City Council said that they would like to spend 20% on pedestrian safety, 40% to affect the goals of the Affordable Housing Needs Assessment, and increase workforce housing, inclusive of operating and capital, with guidance by the Housing and Human Service Advisory Board, and 40% to affect the goals of the Ann Arbor's climate action. So here we are 7 years later with a 8-year millage. In the meantime, the funds that have been allocated annually through the budget process has gone to the Ann Arbor Housing Commission to affect the capital and operations for affordable housing. Up until the city adopted the affordable housing millage, all of those funds were really going toward capital expenditures. Once the city adopted the affordable housing millage, up to 20% of those funds can be used for services related to properties that were developed with the affordable housing millage. Since then, we've acquired a property. We've got several properties that are under development. We've funded several nonprofits doing affordable housing development, and we just today closed on a project for a for-profit developer with another one coming in line. I wanted to make sure that the public understands how those funds are used. And so after the millage was adopted, the Housing Commission, instead of funding all capital projects, we ended up changing to funding services for residents that are living in our supportive housing. And it's really critical services, and so I wanted to let the public know that they can also look up Resolution 23-241, which talks about how those are spent.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Matthew Weber.
Hello, and thanks for the opportunity to address the council. I am a Ann Arbor resident and recent appointee to the Housing Commission. In my professional life, I work for a national nonprofit that helps communities around the country strengthen their homeless systems of care. And in that work, in all the communities we're working in, whether it's in California or Oregon or Texas or Pennsylvania or North Carolina, all those communities are pursuing a housing first approach to homelessness, which means when someone's experiencing a housing crisis, we are offering them housing as their first option there without imposing preconditions such as becoming sober before they get the housing or getting their mental health issues under control before they get the housing. And that's a recognition based on national best practices that once people get stabilized in housing, then they can deal with all that other stuff they need to do to get their lives back on track. I want to take the opportunity to talk to council tonight on the same resolution that Jennifer Hall addressed, because in the work I do, everyone who's pursuing housing first recognizes that housing first can't be housing only. It needs to be paired with supportive services. That's what makes the model successful. And again, in all those communities I work in, it's really rare for local governments to have money available to support those supportive services. Communities are scrambling, trying to get money from HUD, trying to get money from various grant sources. So Ann Arbor really is a national model in providing that funding for those supportive services, and it's saving lives. It is making the housing investment that Ann Arbor has already made more effective, and I think ultimately it's saving money because we're not sending people out for even more services, even more support on the public coffer. So I really just want to applaud the city for its commitment to providing those services with that millage funding. I can tell you the communities we work in would be jealous of Ann Arbor for having that funding available, and I hope you continue to provide that support. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kendra Markle.
Hi, thank you for having me tonight. My name is Kendra, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Right to Sit bill. I have been a hairstylist for 18 years. I absolutely love my job, and I couldn't imagine seeing myself doing anything else. The last couple of years have been a little bit difficult for me. I was born with scoliosis, and as I have been getting older, it has been a little bit more difficult for me to do my job without experiencing pain. One thing that has absolutely saved my career is having a chair to sit on during my workday. It is just a basic chair with 4 wheels, a cushioned seat, and a small back. Being able to sit during a few tasks throughout the day has made it so I can complete a full day of work without being extremely sore. It has not changed my productivity. In fact, it has done the exact opposite. My morale at work is better, and my productivity is the same whether I'm sitting in a chair or standing on my feet. I am able to go home to my kids and still live a life instead of having to rest so I can just complete another work day. When this all started, I did not have insurance. At the time, I received a lot of backlash from my employer about having a chair next to me and sitting during the workday. They claimed that I would need a note from a doctor for accommodations or being claimed as disabled to have this chair. I thought this was absolutely absurd, as I was not going to pay out of pocket just for a doctor to tell my employee that I can take a seat and have a rest during the day. After a few months of going back and forth with my employer about a simple chair, I was able to prove that sitting in a chair did not inhibit my job at all. I was making or exceeding every goal they set out for me, whether it was in the chair or standing on my feet all day. Being comfortable at work should not be deemed as laziness and should be considered for the morale and productivity for our employees. It has literally saved my career, and I hope you guys take the time and really understand the bill that's about to come up. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Jessica Riley.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is Jessica Riley. I am a social work student at the University of Michigan and a former restaurant employee. There are several points I'd like to make today supporting the right to sit ordinance and associated resolution. First, this is a labor rights issue because it relates to the safety of the workplace and health of the worker. According to the CDC, there's ample evidence that prolonged standing in the workplace leads to a number of negative health outcomes. This includes low back pain, physical fatigue, muscle pain, leg swelling, tiredness, body part discomfort, and even cardiovascular problems and adverse pregnancy outcomes. I have worked as a cashier at a chain restaurant and been denied the right to sit when there was no need for me to stand. I remember that in order to make it through the 8-hour shifts, I would stretch on my work breaks, on my lunch breaks, and go to the bathroom just for the periodic time where I got to sit down. The CDC concludes that the ability for workers to have movement during work, such as being able to easily shift from standing to sitting, seem to be a common suggestion in nearly all of the literature on this topic. My second point is that this is also a human rights issue, concerned with dignity, fairness, and respect. Not all people who need to sit periodically have a legally qualifying disability, and this ordinance change would ensure that all employees are treated fairly and provided what they need. It is undignified to be forced to stand when sitting doesn't interfere with job duties. A Jacobin article asserts it's pointless and mean-spirited. They deserve the right to sit down. My third point is that workers are more productive if they have the right to sit, especially because this ordinance doesn't allow for interference with job duties. A 2016 study from researchers at Texas A&M found that productivity increases when people have the ability to sit and stand throughout the workday. In my food service job, I was responsible for monitoring the front of the house to ensure that I didn't miss a customer coming in. And there was plenty of room at my station for a stool or a small chair. And if I did have the right to sit, it's unlikely that I would have been in the back of the house or residing in an area that I couldn't see the dining room because it was part of my job duties to monitor that space. This is also true for most front of house restaurant positions such as a hostess, wherein a simple stool would provide much needed relief. And my final point, that there has been little evidence of employer complaints about enforcing this. So in cities or localities that have passed or proposed the right to sit laws, there have been limited reports of service industry employers mounting legal challenges or raising substantial complaints. In California, where the state labor code includes seating requirements, service industry resistance has been relatively low across the board. Most complaints that have arisen tend to focus on broader labor and employment concerns like wages, benefits, working conditions, rather than seating requirements specifically. So if this were to pass, I hope to expect little pushback, but major impact on the people of this city. I appreciate the opportunity to have my support and for this important ordinance documented, and I welcome any questions from the council if there are any.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Our next question is Sydney Heed.
Hello. My name is Sydney Heed, and I'm here to speak in favor of the right to sit ordinance. I was born in Ann Arbor, and I've lived here most of my life. I grew up in a working-class family, and as a result, higher education initially seemed out of reach. So as a young adult, I turned to hospitality and worked in multiple local hotels and restaurants. I was good at every job I held and got promoted multiple times, but I was constantly in pain. I was diagnosed with scoliosis as a young child, and over the course of my life, it worsened to 90 degrees. I've dealt with chronic pain since middle school. Later on, I also developed POTS, or postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, which means that standing for long periods can make me out of breath, nauseous, dizzy, fatigued, and even affect my working memory. Nonetheless, at a certain point, you need money to live, so I kept working. But I almost never disclosed my diagnoses, especially before I had a chance to prove that I could do the job. And it would appear my instincts were correct. The Harvard Business Review states, "Unfortunately, research indicates it's not rare for a disability disclosure to lead to accusations of faking and other negative attitudes, both conscious and unconscious." Additionally, the Job Accommodation Network says, according to the EEOC, an employer does not have to rescind discipline or an evaluation warranted by poor performance simply because an employee has disclosed a disability or requested accommodation. It was also made clear to me that making allowances for my body was not okay. Once when I was working at a local hotel, I was told that I was never to sit down in view of a guest, but that I also was not allowed to leave the desk unattended. At a restaurant, I was called out for even leaning on the counter. Being on your feet that much isn't good for anybody, and it especially wasn't good for me. I eventually had to leave the industry, and my pain worsened to the point where I had to have major spinal surgery, which also resulted in life-threatening surgical complications. Turns out being on my feet so much probably wasn't good for me, but honestly, it isn't good for anybody. This legislation is absolutely an issue of disability justice, and disability can impact any person at any point in their life temporarily or permanently, whether or not it is recognized by the law. It is also an issue of economic justice because those who do these kinds of jobs are those who need them, like me. But it's more than that. This legislation is a human rights issue because it ensures that people have the right to take care of their bodies and are not forced to sacrifice their health to long-term wear and tear based on the preferences of their employer. It ensures that we maintain ownership of our bodies and their long-term health, and that our employers cannot make those decisions for us. Anything left than the right to rest our bodies when they need it is an affront to bodily autonomy and human rights. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to speak today, and I sincerely hope for a more accessible workplace in the town where I grew up. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ian Robinson.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is Ian Robinson. I'm a resident of Ann Arbor. I'm also the president of the Area Labor Federation, Huron Valley Area Labor Federation. And as an organization that represents workers and workers' rights and interests, we have an interest in the right to sit modification to the ordinance that's being proposed. I will say that we have not had extensive discussions of this. It's a relatively new issue to us. But you heard eloquent testimony already from workers for whom this would make a huge difference, and we take that kind of testimony very seriously. I'll also say that even though we are beginning our process of thinking and learning about this, we do start from certain premises that our history and our experience has shown to be generally true. Now, one of those is that workers shouldn't be denied work that they can perform because there are arbitrary restrictions on on processes that could easily be changed. And this has happened over the years in many ways, and when they were removed, they benefited the workers. They often benefited the employer too. But there needed to be some push for that to happen. It's also true that in a time of labor shortage, which I think many of our industries here in Ann Arbor face, opening up the opportunities for people who might otherwise be excluded is a good thing. It's in the public interest as well as the individual worker's interest. And of course, it increases the pool available to employers. So it seems like a win-win-win to eliminate barriers that are not, in fact, essential to the work. Related to the essential duties, it's our understanding that this ordinance that's being proposed would not, in fact, override the need to be able to perform essential duties. In other words, it wouldn't force employers to take on someone who couldn't do the things that really needed to be done for that job. So we're not actually facing that kind of a problem. And fourth, we know there's a long history in America, and I'm sure in other countries as well, of labor standards when they're first introduced being vigorously protested by employers who are not interested in changing the way they do business, and yet over time have proven to not be detrimental to their business or even beneficial. There's often an overreaction out of fear of the new and the novel when new labor standards are introduced. So I think we look forward to being part of an ongoing discussion about what these kinds of reforms would mean, to being at the table as that discussion unfolds, to hearing from employers that have concerns, to hearing from employees for whom this would make a positive difference, and also from researchers who've looked at what these kinds of ordinances mean in other places where they've been introduced. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Beth Ping.
Hi, Mayor and council members. My name is Beth Ping, and I'm the chair of the Ann Arbor chapter of the Government Affairs Committee at the Greater Metropolitan Association of Realtors. Speaking about the ordinance to amend Chapter 102 of the Home Energy Rating Disclosure of Title 8. While we have voiced our opposition to this ordinance in the past, since its passage, we've tried to work with city officials to ensure implementation goes as smoothly as possible. And by introducing these proposed changes, we feel like it's actually creating some new problems and doesn't solve the ones that are there. So here are a couple of examples. In Section 8, 395-1, it's attempting to clarify dwellings that do not require the disclosure. So we've seen multiple issues related to what types of buildings require the disclosure, and the most common issue we've seen is that a condo is exempt from the rule, but yet agents and sellers have received notifications threatening them that they're going to be fined anyway. So that's one of the issues. And let's see, I'm going to refer to Ashley Muse condominium as an example of where the situation's unclear. This project consists of multiple unit types. In some cases, those units are townhome style, only to adjoin other units laterally, and then in other cases, the units are stacked, and both unit types can be found within a contiguous structure that would constitute one building. The sale of a townhome would therefore be the sale of a single unit in a building where multiple dwelling units are stacked vertically. So in our opinion, this new language, it's just not cleared up well enough. And then one more issue is in Section 8, 396-1B2, which requires sellers to provide a copy of the home energy score report to all prospective buyers who visit the dwelling. That's the proposed change of the wording. And I think like if you guys have all sold a house before, usually you have a realtor involved, and you're not even supposed to be at the house. But this ordinance is saying that the seller is responsible for providing this to people who visit the house. It doesn't make sense. So what we would really hope is, I don't know, I know where it is on your agenda tonight, is it to actually to vote on it, or if it's just discussion or what. But we would hope that we would have more opportunity as an association of realtors and industry people to give more input on how to clear up some of these issues so that it becomes more helpful. So that's our hope.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Zach Damon.
That was me.
Beth Ping.
That was Beth Ping.
Perfect. No, thank you. Our next speaker is Zach Damon.
Zach Damon is joining us on Zoom.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I do apologize that I'm not there in person, but I assure you I am there in spirit. To all the remarks prior, to Ms. Markle, to Ms. Riley, to Ms. Heed, and to Mr. Robinson, I too am to speak on the right to sit, DC1C-4, which is the resolution for the right to sit. I am the current chairman of the Commission on Disability Issues, but I speak with you this evening as that, but also as a resident. This resolution is a crucial step toward promoting a healthier work environment by allowing employees to sit when their job duties do permit. It is not just for these legally recognized disabilities to go workers need to be given the right to sit. But this also needs to be met for workers who do not meet the threshold for legal disability, as fees of physical challenges and fees for health care can be astronomical, as others have said. And prolonged standing can be detrimental to their long-term health as well as their current work performance and work condition. Like others have mentioned, back pain, arthritis, and other health conditions can be detrimental. And many workers also lack the access, again, to healthcare and the documentation needed to formally request accommodations, and many can get denied. This initiative ensures that all employees, regardless of their access to healthcare or former diagnosis, can protect their health and their well-being while on the job. Beyond protecting their existing conditions, this resolution is about preventing future harm. Even for able-bodied workers, prolonged standing can lead to serious health issues over time. For example, I myself worked at a local business here in Ann Arbor. I had to stand for prolonged periods of time, and I was reprimanded for even leaning against something because that was deemed as unprofessional. By granting workers the right to sit when feasible, Ann Arbor is promoting long-term well-being and creating a more equitable workplace. This resolution, in my opinion, marks a significant move toward a healthier, more inclusive work environment for the city, ensuring that all employees can work in conditions that
30 seconds.
their well-being. Thank you very much, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Alex Lowe.
Alex Lowe is joining us on Zoom. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Alex Lowe calling in from North Southeast East Ann Arbor. First, I'd like to extend ein herzliches Willkommen to our esteemed guests from Tübingen and to let them know that despite all the jokes they may have about Deutsche Bahn, it would be an absolute dream for many of us here in Ann Arbor to have service anywhere near what Tübingen Hauptbahnhof is. To City Council, I apologize, but I misspoke when I called the clerk's office. I mean to speak on CA5, not CA3. This is a good step forwards, but it's not enough. The bike lane and buffer should not be between the parking lane and the driving lane. It should be between the parking lane and the curb. This allows for protection between the bike lane and the parking, protecting both bicyclists riding eastbound on Pauline and passengers exiting their vehicles along this parking lane, making it actually an all ages and abilities bike lane, which the proposal will not be. Related to CA10, I think it's great that the city is taking over the sidewalk easement, but please tell me why, despite no work having happened at 2111 Packard for such a long time, the sidewalk's still blocked off. It sure seems like blocking off bikeways and sidewalks is something that we let developers get away with in ways that we wouldn't let them get away with blocking car traffic. So it's ironic that despite our A20 goals, our traffic safety goals, etc., we so regularly make it harder for people to walk and bike in Ann Arbor for a mild convenience for drivers. If we're going to continue to have the sidewalk blocked off, what we need is to make that small section of Packard 2 lanes, put up some Jersey barriers, and allow cyclists and pedestrians to share the space between the Jersey barriers and the curb. Finally, on C3, as someone who's currently in the process of selling his house, I actually think that closing these loopholes is a great thing, so keep it up. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Letitia Horry.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here. I am a Master's of Social Work student also at the University of Michigan. And I have the pleasure of working with our Washtenaw Intermediate School District, specifically on the bridge team that is directed by Ms. Darnisha Green. As you may know, the WISD supports all 9 districts within the county. Right? That's a large feat for any district. We know there are some bigger and smaller. But the Bridge Team is a special program that provides mental health support to all the students within it, all the general education students from kindergarten through 12th grade. We know that our students deserve the best opportunity for mental health support and all that which is there. I'll just make sure. Please note that the Bridge Team is comprised of licensed clinical social workers, all trained, school endorsed to be able to provide this. The benefits that they offer include counseling and coordination, intervention strategies in order to support our students that can be offered in both individual and group sessions inside the schools. So we're literally pushing inside the schools to provide support to our student body. In addition to that, they work with and collaborate, utilize wraparound techniques, which means we include the families, the schools, our teachers, our community partners to create individualized plans for our students. The Bridge Team also supports students in crisis. We all understand what crisis can mean and how far that can be. And the Bridge Team steps in addition to our community partners, to be able to help our students to be able to meet all the goals that they have. Please note that in addition to this, we know that the Bridge Team, they have direct positive influence on academic success in and out of the classroom, improving performance, decreasing anxiety and depression, providing students and our school families with additional support to help them achieve their educational goals. So you may wonder how a student participates in the Bridge program. It all starts with referrals from those who are closest to our students. Our teachers, our counselors, our community leaders, individuals like yourselves, coaches, friends, church members. I have provided each of you with a flyer in front of you. This is our one-page handout that we provide and we share to the community. At the bottom right of that flyer, there is a QR code. If you want to take your phone and scan the QR code, it takes you right to the referral. It is a very simple process. You complete the referral. That referral comes into our Bridge Team. It is in process. We then gain consent from our parents. We establish a care plan if they're eligible, and therapy begins. The more our students are supported, the more they're able to overcome the challenges that they face in classroom and in life. Please help us to share the word. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Kathy Griswold.
I always enjoy coming to council because it's such a positive environment, not necessarily a realistic environment, but definitely positive. And I enjoy listening to the other speakers, and I learned so much about the Bridge program, so thank you. And Alex Lowe talking about sidewalks. Last week I was in Seattle visiting my grandson, but he does take naps, so I was able to go out and study the pedestrian infrastructure. And I would say Seattle is truly a progressive city, whereas when you look at our pedestrian infrastructure, we're more of a corporate city. When you look at our sidewalks, frequently they're closed off. If you want to build in Ann Arbor, just tell us how many lanes you need and we'll give them to you, as well as a sidewalk and the bike lane and whatever. So anyway, in Seattle, they define Vision Zero as, it's not just our plan to end traffic deaths and serious injuries on city streets by 2030. It is a culture of care and dignity for everyone who uses Seattle streets. So it's not the cyclists versus the drivers versus whoever. I really enjoyed walking around Seattle, and Seattle has a street improvement program that was actually described to the Planning Commission at least 6 months ago, and I hope that we take a look at it again. And then I'm not really going to talk about myself so much now, but what other people are saying out on the internet. And my topic that I requested was cleansed a bit, but it was increasing crashes, increasing dollars spent, and increasing incriminating information on social media. So, we know that 2023 was a worst year for pedestrian crashes since 2014. So what has City Council done? Not discussed it. Good idea. Okay, but other people are. Crashesinannarbor.org. I suggest you go there. And there's information about the crash, the scooter crash, on Hill and Packard. The scooter driver ran a red light. Why? Because the pedestrian signal said walk. It's clearly identified by an engineer. This is the most incriminating information I have seen yet. It is totally inexcusable. It needs to be corrected tomorrow. And what can we do? We can put grates over our pedestrian signals, just like Seattle does. So if you want to look at me, you can only see me when you're looking straight at me. Same thing with the pedestrian signal. My time is almost up. I just want to say I put a ticket in, and I was told it was not part of our 5-year plan, so they weren't going to do anything about it. That sounds like communism, not a progressive city. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there communications today from council? Councilmember Dish.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. Yeah. I just wanted to say that welcome to our delegation from our sister city in Tübingen. And I wanted to say, as I said a few weeks ago, that on Wednesday evening from 6 to 7:30 p.m., Lord Mayor Palmer will be telling us what we can learn from our sister city about, well, I don't mean to say that as if, but you're going to share with us the wonderful things that are going there to equitably address the climate crisis and how that can help shape our A20 initiative. And then also, this Friday is coming up the A20 Green Fair on Main Street, and we will be taking you all there. And everyone in the community, of course, is invited, and you can sample lots of different things. I think you might be able to sample Ann Arbor water. Sometimes that happens. But there's also vegan food and many other really fun things and games to play, and it's just a great time, and the weather's perfect unless it abruptly changes, which in Michigan it never does. So we'll see you there.
Councilmember Adina.
Thank you, Mayor. I too would like to formally extend our welcome to our visitors from Tübingen. Obviously, several of us got the chance to chat with you earlier, but it is wonderful to have you here in our council chambers and back in Ann Arbor, so thank you. Adding on to what Councilmember Dish actually just shared, earlier when I was speaking with Lord Mayor Palmer, he mentioned that he was here in 2008 and also did a presentation, and so for anyone who is planning to attend this year's presentation, you can use our Ann Arbor District Library archives and actually watch the 2008 presentation ahead of time and prepare for it and see all of the great things that have been happening since his last visit. And then I will also announce Councilmember Ghazi Edwin and I are having our Ward 3 office hours. Our next one is on October 1st from 6 to 7 p.m. at the Burns Park Shelter, and we will be joined by special guest Josh Landefeld, who is our Parks and Recreation Manager. So we welcome members of the community to attend.
Further communications today from council. Councilmember Watson.
I'd like to thank the residents who joined me at my coffee hour yesterday, and a big thanks as well to Parks Manager Josh Landefeld for coming out to speak to residents about the parks. And then just a reminder that the final virtual information session for the Nixon Corridor Improvement Project is on Wednesday, September 18th, so this Wednesday, from 7 to 8:30 p.m. And a Zoom link will be posted the day of the session at a2gov.org/Nixon. And run over directly after visiting Mayor Palmer.
Further communication. I'd like to report briefly. A number of council members and myself had the opportunity to attend services and to view the protest at the Beth Israel Synagogue this past Shabbat, and it was, I think, an experience that all of us will long recollect. The protest, as has been articulated here at the council table, is indeed it's a stain upon our community. It is naturally propagated by an extremely small set of people, but nevertheless, it is something with which we must all reckon. Further, as is known, there has been an incident of anti-Semitic violence reported just recently on and near campus, and I know that without having checked, but I am extremely confident that this entire council, indeed the entire municipal organization, declares that to be intolerable and that we condemn it. Anti-Semitism naturally targets Jews, but it degrades our entire community by striking against pluralism, which is indeed our foundational value. Anti-Semitism is a problem of our entire community. It is an Ann Arbor problem, and with respect to this particular incident, all folks should know that we will investigate and prosecute to the fullest extent. I'd like to request confirmation of the following appointments that were presented to City Council on September 3rd, 2024. To the Elizabeth Dean Fund Committee, Robert Davenport. To the Zoning Board of Appeals, Drew Desden. May I have a motion, please? Moved by Councilmember Cornell, seconded by Councilmember Redina. Discussion of these appointments. All in favor? Opposed? They're approved. We have before us the consent agenda. May I have a motion, please, to approve the consent agenda? Moved by Councilmember Briggs, seconded by Councilmember Ackman. Discussion of the consent agenda. All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Ackman.
Yep, there are just a couple items that I'd like to talk about because they concern road reconstruction and safety. One is CA5, which is about prohibiting on-street parking on a portion of Pauline Boulevard to facilitate the installation of part of our All Ages, All Abilities network. And even though what's before us is just to approve the removal of the parking, I'm particularly excited about this project because I think it might be one of our first major collector road projects where we're implementing raised crosswalks, speed bumps, things to minimize the speeds on that road, which we know are so important to safety. And so just want to express my excitement and appreciation to staff for that work. And then the second one is immediately following about installation on traffic calming devices on Arella, which is in Ward 4 and something that I heard about as I knocked on doors in 2022. And you might have noticed that there was a note accompanying this, this is the last traffic calming project that's going to come to council for approval as per the resolution that we passed about a year ago to make these things more speedy and efficient. And I'll just note that I actually heard from a resident about this when she saw it in my newsletter and said, I thought there already was a vote on this because they pulled the neighborhood. And I had to explain to her, no, we still have to vote on it, but I expect it to pass. And this is the last time that it will have to get council approval. So thanks.
Further discussion of the consent agenda. All in favor? All opposed? The consent agenda is approved with 10 council members present, all voting in the affirmative, thus satisfying the 8-vote requirement with respect to CA4, CA6, and CA10 and CA11. We now come to a set of public hearings. Public hearings are opportunities for members of the public to speak to council and the community about the specific subject matter of the public hearing. To speak at a public hearing, one need not have signed up in advance, but your speech must relate to the specific subject matter of the public hearing. That is to say, the specific item on the agenda to which the public hearing relates. Speakers in all instances will have 3 minutes in which to speak, so please pay close attention to the time. Our clerk or the time clock will notify you when 30 seconds are remaining and when your time has expired. When your time has expired, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor. Public hearing number 1, ordinance to amend section 5.20.3 of Chapter 55, Unified Development Code of Title 5 of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor, Vehicular Use Area Buffer. Is there anyone in-house who would like to speak at this public hearing? Is there anyone online who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Mayor, I don't have any callers online with their hands up.
Seeing no one, this public hearing is closed. Public hearing number 2, an ordinance to amend Chapter 75, leaf blowers of Title 6 of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor. Is there anyone in-house who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Thanks, Mayor Taylor. Ken Garber, Second Ward. First of all, I'd like to thank this council for approving the original leaf blower ordinance. These belching, soul-destroying monsters have been poisoning our fall season here in Ann Arbor and the rest of Michigan for the last 20 years in more senses than one. So this ordinance gave me great satisfaction and hope. The question here tonight is whether electric leaf blowers can perform efficiently enough to quickly create these burn breaks at controlled burn sites. At the last meeting, staff mentioned that they tested 2 electric leaf blower models and that these proved to be 2 to 3 times less efficient than gas-powered blowers. My question is, did staff test a battery backpack electric leaf blower or just the handheld models? The backpack blowers, where you strap the lithium batteries to your back, are now very efficient. For example, Ryobi, Greenworks, and Ego all make electric blowers with power specs, at least on paper, comparable to a typical gas-powered leaf blower. They're heavier, true, but that shouldn't be a deal breaker. I'd happily hoist a heavier pack because it won't endanger my hearing or spew out insane quantities of carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxides, and non-methane hydrocarbons, as the gas versions do, as you know. So if staff hasn't already, I suggest giving 1 or 2 backpack models a try before concluding that electric isn't good enough for the job. Maybe staff did test one of these. If so, great. But if not, I don't think you should approve this exception until that's done. There doesn't seem to be any great hurry on this, since the vast majority of these controlled burns happen in spring, and even the ones scheduled for this fall shouldn't have a problem, because my understanding is that staff has opted not to enforce the ordinance this year, or at least that's what the condo association where I live was told. You've got 5 or 6 months to deal with this. I suggest exploring all the options thoroughly before carving out another exception to this ordinance.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in-house who would like to speak at this public hearing? Is there anyone online who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Alex Lowe online, do you have a comment?
Hi, this is Alex Lowe calling in from North Southeast East Ann Arbor. I think that Mr. Garber is pretty reasonable with what he asked. And I think regardless of what the answer to his questions is, maybe the way to do this would be to have this be a temporary exception that gets renewed every 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, something like that. So that the default would be to have the gas leaf blower ban go back into action without those exceptions, and the exception would have to be reevaluated each time, rather than our default of these lasting forever. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I don't have any other callers with their hands up for this hearing.
Seeing no one, this public hearing is closed. We have before us the regular session meeting minutes of September 3rd, 2024. May I have a motion, please, to approve these minutes? Moved by Councilmember Watson, seconded by Councilmember Dish. Discussion of the minutes. All in favor? Opposed? The minutes are approved. B1, an ordinance to amend Section 5.20.3 of Chapter 55, Unified Development Code of Title 5 of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor, Vehicular Use Area Buffer, moved by Councilmember Cornell, seconded by Councilmember Iyer. Discussion, please, of B1. Councilmember Dish.
I've spoken about this before, so I'll be very brief. This is purely corrective. There is no change to the requirements to buffer vehicular use areas, which continue to include screening from right-of-way, landscaping with interior landscape islands, and buffers adjacent to parks and residentially zoned parcels. Changes were made to only the presentation of this information in the UDC. These changes were inadvertently omitted when the UDC was updated to reflect the substantive changes that this council made to the conflicting use barrier requirements, conflicting use buffer requirements that were approved in February 2024. So really, we're just correcting essentially Scrivener's error here, essentially.
Further discussion? All in favor? All opposed? It is approved. B2, an ordinance to amend Chapter 75, leaf blowers of Title 6 of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor, moved by Councilmember Dish, seconded by Councilmember Radina. Discussion, please, of B2. Councilmember Radina.
Thank you, Mayor. Given the question that we actually just received during the public hearing, I wonder if a member of staff is available to articulate which leaf blowers were tested, which electric leaf blowers were tested, and what style?
Mr. Downey?
Mayor, we have Derek Delacourt and Remy Long from staff.
Thank you.
Good evening. Straight to the answer, I have in front of me notes on at least one of the models that was tested by field staff. It was the Steel BGA 300 with an AR 3000 battery, which, as it's noted here by staff, is the most powerful electric leaf blower available through Steel. I do not have the details on the other electric model, but I do know for certain that both were backpack battery powered and not handheld.
I'd also like to add, in working with staff, we have no desire to continue to use gas-powered leaf blowers. The minute, and staff is going to pay attention, regardless of whether there's a year or 2 year, the minute staff finds an electric model that is able to do the job in a manner that is consistent with the safety necessary to do the job and to do the number of acres we need to do to justify the program, we're going to switch to it. This is not something we're happy to be here asking, nor something that we're desirous of. So I just want to make council aware, per the previous conversations and the ones going forward, this is something that staff is going to continue to look to, and every opportunity we have, we make the transition to electric tools. We understand council's desires and the need for this for our 820 goals. So regardless of whether there's a time frame on it or not, as soon as there is a unit able to do what we needed to do, we're going to make the switch.
Thank you. And we're not purchasing any new equipment, correct? We're just utilizing the equipment that we currently have?
Correct.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Councilmember Cornell.
I want to thank the public commenters, Mr. Garber and Mr. Lowe, for their input, because I think some of what they had raised really articulates well some of the reasons, the bulk of the reasons why I voted against this when it came up at our last meeting. I don't see that there's a plan really for evaluating emerging technology, a timeline for it, and I appreciate staff's assurance, but I feel a little frustrated that we're 2 contracts into gas-powered golf carts with no plan to transition from that. And I understand that it's a budget issue, but I think I would be very comfortable postponing this and putting a time cap on this to come back to council with some data around what has been done to advance this so that we are actually having a focus on it, and staff and council are in alignment in terms of timing and priorities.
Further discussion?
Do I need to make a formal motion to postpone, Mr. Mayor?
If you wish to make the motion, then you do.
I would like to postpone this for continued dialogue with staff and council and bring it back at the next meeting.
Is there a second on the postponement? Second by Councilor Briggs. Discussion on the postponement. Councilor Ackman.
I would like to know from staff how this potentially impacts operations, and use this opportunity to clarify that we are enforcing the leaf blower ordinance. It's just that you can use gas powered from October to May until 2028. So I wanted to clarify that point, but I would like to know what the impact to staff operations would be in this area for us to postpone this.
I'll let Remy speak to detail. I don't think postponing will have a great impact. Currently, we do not have electric blowers that we would be comfortable doing burns with. To date, we have not enforced the current ordinance and allowed that to go forward based on the fact that we recognize the importance to the ecological balance of the community to do the burns. I would be stunned in 2 weeks there's any technology or anything that would change staff's opinion about this direction. We, in this instance, staff, different than the golf carts, would be happy to use leaf blowers. It's not a financial issue. It's not a budget issue similar to golf carts, and how our recommendation worked there in that instance. We were recommending against the use of them. Here, we're only recommending that they don't meet the needs of the program, and that without them, currently staff would not recommend moving forward with the burn program. So it doesn't really impact our operations much, but also I don't think between now and then, you've heard Remy talk about what they've tested already, that staff's recommendation is going to change much in the next 2 weeks.
I agree with that assessment. Yeah, an immediate impact to the program is minimal for postponement. Long-term, it is the natural area preservation staff's objective to work closely with the park operations team, who is adopting the latest, greatest, more powerful leaf blower technologies as they become available for their operations, which are a bit different than the needs of an electric leaf blower in a prescribed fire operation, but we still would then have those available to us to test regularly year to year as those tools become available to the Parks Department as a whole. So we plan on regularly testing new technology as it becomes available and gets in Parks' hands.
Yeah, unlike golf carts, those are 3-year leases, which we decide on in 3-year increments. In this instance, the minute the technology is available, we're going to upgrade.
Councilor.
We don't have any budgetary reason not to, and we don't have any desire to use gas leaf blowers. We're not locked into any contract with the equipment we have now, similar to golf courts or golf carts. The instant the technology is available and we're testing it with other departments, as soon as we can use it, we're going to make the switch. So,
Councilmember Briggs.
Thank you. I think what I heard my colleague ask for was not that the technology might shift within the next couple of weeks, but that a plan might be presented to council that might say simply, on an annual basis or every 2 years or whatever that time period might seem that might be logical. A report might come to council and say, this decision technology has been evaluated, and we've decided to transition, or alternatively, the technology is not there yet, but we anticipate, we will be testing again in another year. So I think that's the sort of the feedback and sort of accountability, recognizing that this is something the staff is already suggesting is going to happen, but it provides some more accountability to us as a city to be, carrying out the same operations that we've asked the private sector to do.
yeah, if that's helpful, staff has no opposition to it being amended on the floor right now and not even coming back 2 weeks and having us come back in a year, whatever timeframes council wants the update. Like I said, it's a change we plan on making as soon as it's available. So if you want to amend it to put the time frame in now, and that saves having to bring it back. We're glad to accept it.
Perhaps in this light, we can, does anyone object to the motion to postpone being withdrawn? In that light? Further, if I may suggest, two things. One, although this has been a council to staff conversation, it's important to note that this is a ordinance of general application. We're not the only parties that conduct ecological burns. And so I think while, for my part, all the confidence in the world that if, the big bad blower was released tomorrow, staff would jump on it. That is not our presently, the full articulation of how public might respond. It might make sense, it does make sense to me to pass the ordinance as is, but put a sunset on the condition so that it only extends, say, for 2 years through the end of December 31, 2026. In that light, staff would, come back to us in 2 years if the conditions, continued as was, or would have reported to us their great success in finding an excellent leaf blower. Members of the public who are able to comply would comply. If they're not able to comply, they'd come in and report, etc. This way, we at the table could be assured that this would wash out in 2 years, and then we'd see what happened then. And so perhaps there can be then an addition, someone could move at the end, and also further, I guess I'd say, because this does not increase restrictiveness, it's my presumption that a sunset on this provision would not require a second reading. Is that correct, Ms. Kaur?
Yes, I believe that's correct, because there'll be a reevaluation of the sunset.
Thank you. And so what I think should happen, and I'll just finish my statement, and then if Councilmember Radina has something to say, then I bated breath, interested to hear it. At the end of to prepare or conduct blah, 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 or ecological restoration prior to December 31, 2026. That would be the proposed amendment, adding prior to December 31, 2026. Thus, the exception would wash out on January 1, 2027. Councilmember Radina.
So I think I've heard that such an amendment would not require us to move back to first reading, which was one of my concerns. I think the other piece that I wondered about, though, I mean, what I heard my colleagues potentially articulating was rather that they'd like to see a plan from staff to regularly be evaluating this, and for all we know, 6 months from now, there could be new technology on the market that could render this entire amendment unnecessary. And I guess I wonder if rather than applying an arbitrary sunset, at which point we may have to come back and extend it, although hopefully we would not. I wonder if what we're actually looking for is a separate resolution directing staff to be consistently evaluating this so that we would then amend the...
Seems a separate question, but...
It does, although I worry that we're creating a problem we're going to have to revisit if the technology is not caught up.
I got Dish, then Ackman.
Okay, I'm not sure if you were saying that we're not supposed to talk about this, Mr. Mayor, but if it is okay that we talk about that, I heard the same request for a plan, and I heard a plan. Actually, I heard that it is their operating procedure that NAP is acquiring the latest technology as they replace their existing, and it is through NAP that the testing of new technology is regularly, routinely done, and that when NAP says, hey, we got a real good one, it could be adopted by the controlled, the other parts of NAP. It could be adopted by the controlled burn part. It was really said much more clearly by Mr. Long, but he made it sound as if the upgrading is already a routine, and if we want them to articulate that as a plan, they would be happy to do that. But it's not clear to me that we need that, and I think the sunset is a good idea for the reasons that Mr. Mayor articulated, because this policy applies to private contractors as well as the city, who will not necessarily update as quickly, so it's more prudent to offer a sunset, in my opinion.
I got Briggs and Ackman. Was it Ackman Briggs? My apologies.
I guess I just wanted to point out that we already have a pattern set forth in the original ordinance for sunsetting. That is the phase-in which we're allowing the gas-powered leaf blowers basically during the heavy leaf season until 2028. And so that was obviously a gamble based on our kind of, I don't know, seemed like a good space of time to let technology evolve and people to replace equipment. And I guess I just wonder if maybe we should be consistent with that. Like, I don't know. Instead of 2026 and 2028. And to me, this exception is somewhat consistent with the other exceptions that we have in there. So it seems like we might want to follow a similar pattern.
The amendment has not yet been, I don't move amendments, so the amendment has not yet been moved. But y'all could. Councilmember Briggs.
Yeah, and I was going to concur with you, Mayor, around your recommendation for a sunset as opposed to a plan coming back to us. I think that recognizing this applies to the private sector, it's useful to have the private sector, have a sunset as to what that exact date is. I will leave that to others to propose.
Well, someone has to propose it.
Councilmember Cornell.
Councilmember Cornell.
I propose it, but I don't think I can say it as
I think if I understand you correctly, you wish to add
a sunset
after ecological restoration prior to December 31, 2028? 2026. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Briggs. There is now a sunset amendment on C after ecological registration prior to December 31, 2026. Discussion of the amendment. Councilmember Cornell, you still have the floor.
I appreciate Councilmember Ackman's comments, but my understanding is that these burns take place outside of the timeline in which the exceptions have been made, and I don't want, I agree with what NAP is trying to do. I think that's absolutely the right thing, but I do think that we need to be more specific with this use because of the type of use that is happening. It is not during just the exception period.
Further discussion of the amendment. Councilmember Medina.
I appreciate where the amendment's coming from. I think I'm ultimately going to vote no. I am not necessarily comfortable imposing an artificial deadline on the sunset without knowing exactly where the technology is going to be, and because it applies to private interests as well as the city, and knowing the financial strain that goes into making transitions for a lot of these private businesses. They're going to be thinking about making transitions 6 months before the deadline and not knowing whether or not we're going to extend it, whether it meets the needs or not. I'm just not going to support this.
Further discussion. Roll call vote on the amendment, starting please with Councilmember Ghazi Edwin.
Councilmember Ghazi Edwin?
On the amendment.
On the amendment, no.
Mayor Taylor?
Yes.
Councilmember Iyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Ackman?
No.
Councilmember Briggs?
Yes.
Councilmember Cornell?
Yes.
Councilmember Dish?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrison?
No.
Councilmember Song, absent. Councilmember Watson?
No.
Councilmember Medina?
No.
Motion fails.
Further discussion of the main motion. All in favor of the main motion? Opposed? Let's do a roll call, please. Roll call vote, please, starting with Councilmember Ghazi Edwin.
Councilmember Ghazi Edwin?
Yes.
Mayor Taylor?
Yes.
Councilmember Iyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Ackman?
Yes.
Councilmember Briggs?
No.
Councilmember Cornell?
No.
Councilmember Dish?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrison?
Yes.
Councilmember Song, absent. Councilmember Watson?
Yes.
Councilmember Medina?
Yes.
Motion carries.
C1, an ordinance to amend Chapter 55 Unified Development Code, rezoning of .51 acres from TWP Township District to R1B Single Family Dwelling District, the Lou property, 44 Huntington Place. Moved by Councilmember Dish, seconded by Councilmember... I thought you were seconding it. Councilmember Watson. Further discussion of C1? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. That was awesome. C2, an ordinance to amend Chapter 55 Unified Development Code, rezoning of .05 acres from TWP Township District to R1B Single Family Dwelling District. The Brixmore property, 110 Albee Way. Moved by Councilmember Dish, seconded by Councilmember Watson. Discussion, please, of C2. All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. C3, an ordinance to amend Chapter 102 Home Energy Rating Disclosure of Title 8. Moved by Councilmember Dish, seconded by Councilmember Iyer. Discussion, please, of C3. Councilmember Iyer.
Thank you. We heard a good question during public comment on this issue, specifically related, and I'm looking for Dr. Stultz.
Just left with the delegation.
Oh.
But she might be coming back. Oh, no.
Okay. Feel free to move on to someone else, and I can hold my question.
Okay. Dr. Stultz.
Paging Dr. Stultz.
Sorry.
Okay.
Seeing our delegation out.
Thank you.
Yes.
So I was wondering if you might address the question that was raised during public comment related to stacked units.
Absolutely. So we have compliance in HERD is based on what the U.S. Department of Energy allows you to get a home energy score on. And as you heard during public comment, that particular unit that they were talking about, that development, has lots of different kinds of housing. And so we needed to clarify which of those housing units can comply with HERD and which cannot, because the U.S. Department of Energy tool doesn't allow them to be assessed. So we did add that clarification. We worked with a realtor. We actually worked with the realtor on this amendment where they were selling all of the units as one package, and that qualifies because you can do an assessment in that space. I know that sounds wonky. The most important thing here to note is we follow what the U.S. Department of Energy can actually assess. Very transparent, and working on administrative rules that help all of the community understand what is in compliance, what needs to go through HERD, and what are the different tools available to help them do that.
Okay. So in essence, the concern that was raised has been addressed.
Yes.
By this amendment.
I would hope so. If
That's the point of it.
Happy to continue having conversations, but yes, we intentionally are attempting, and what's before you is closing all of the conversations we've had with realtors, the loopholes that we found or the challenges to help clarify and make this as easy as possible to protect our buyers in the community. So we believe that it has been, that it actually rectifies a gap we had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Briggs.
Yeah. So I also received some feedback today from folks in the real estate community, and probably I think there's opportunity between first reading and second reading to just connect staff with those, some of the comments that I've received back. Primarily they were sort of concerns around some of the feedback that both those in the real estate community were receiving as they were trying to go through this process, and also some of the feedback that was being conveyed back out to the community that might not be as helpful for us trying to achieve our better energy ratings. So anyway, I'll share that with you because I think that there's a desire maybe just to better understand what these ordinance amendments mean, and if they're really, if now is the time to update the ordinance so quickly thereafter. But I think there's an opportunity to go through some of these concerns that have been raised. Thanks.
Councilmember Cornell.
Dr. Stoltz, before I make a public declaration of something that might not be true, I'm going to ask you the question.
Yes, please.
During public comment, we also heard that there's an awkwardness when the home buyer and the home seller are in the same room. Wouldn't the seller's agent be able to provide the disclosure rating? So that's not also accurate feedback, correct?
Yeah, no, certainly, they could be on the table. They could tell their agent to provide it 100%. That would be in compliance.
Okay, that's it. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Councilmember Dish. Further discussion? For my part, I'm grateful for, the home energy rating disclosure is an important part of, our moving the built environment towards better reflecting our 820 goals and providing buyers an important metric by which to evaluate the home that they're purchasing. And I think it's a good thing, and I'm delighted that we are working towards refining it. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. C4, an ordinance to add a new section, Section 9.155.1 of Chapter 112, Non-Discrimination of Title 9 of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor. Moved by Councilmember Dish, second by Councilmember Ghazi Edwin. Discussion, please, of C4. Councilmember Ghazi Edwin.
Thank you, Mayor. So firstly, I want to sincerely thank everyone who came tonight to support this ordinance, especially those who courageously shared their personal experiences of working without the right to sit, which I think brings much needed context and urgency to this issue. I also want to extend my thanks to Deputy City Attorney Margie Radova, my co-sponsors, the Human Rights Commission, and everyone else who contributed in crafting the ordinance and resolution. I and others have been working on this initiative for almost a year, and once it was ready earlier this week, I wanted it to be published to the agenda to really give the public an opportunity to engage with the material and fully understand its implications. This is also an important ordinance change, and I believe it's essential to engage with both the labor and the business communities to address any remaining questions and clearly outline the benefits, impacts, and implications of implementing this ordinance. I would appreciate more time to ensure that this is done thoroughly. And Mayor, may I just make a motion to postpone?
Absolutely.
So therefore, I would like to make a motion to postpone this ordinance and resolution to the October 7th City Council meeting agenda.
The postponement on DC1 will need to occur during DC1.
Yes.
So there's a motion on the floor to postpone C4, the ordinance, to the first meeting in October. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Cornell. Is there discussion of the postponement? Councilmember Cornell.
I really want to thank my colleague, Councilmember Ghazi Edwin. In the last few days, there's been a lot of feedback, especially from the hospitality industry, indicating confusion around what this might mean, what the actual enforcement might look like, who defines requirements and duties of a job. And I think if we take just this extra time, I appreciate your willingness to do it and engage with some of our hospitality partners. I think that this will just be made stronger and a little bit more understandable, because this is a great idea. And so I think getting the business community excited about it through a little bit of extra education is work worth doing. So thank you, Councilmember Ghazi Edwin.
Further discussion of postponement? Councilor Ackman.
Must confess I didn't know much about this issue until it appeared on our agenda, and I started doing research, and I appreciate the people that came in person to give public comment. I worked in the hospitality industry for over a decade, know what it's like to be on your feet all day, but was not really aware of this as such an acute, issue. I also appreciate the time because I want to hear from small business community. As I read this, I was concerned, is it too vague? Like Councilmember Cornell said, who decides whether a job can be done sitting down and when, who will be doing the enforcing, what will be the implications. And I think that's probably just a little bit of my lack of knowledge about the rest of the section where this sits within our ordinance, because my understanding is that it fits within other things that the Human Rights Commission evaluates. But I would just, I think, I appreciate this postponement because I think it gives all stakeholders an opportunity to learn more and for us to hear from them. So I support that.
Further discussion of postponement? All in favor? Opposed? It is postponed. DC1 resolution in support of an ordinance to add a section 9.155.1 to chapter 112, non-discrimination, right to sit, moved by Councilmember Ghazi Edwin, second by Councilmember Dish. Discussion, please, of DC1. Councilmember Ghazi Edwin.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I've stated my reasons for why I think that this should be postponed, and I hope to, again, engage with various stakeholders before I bring this forward again.
So you're looking for a motion, so you're moving to postpone until the first meeting of October?
That's exactly.
Super.
Thank you.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Udina. Discussion of the postponement. Councilmember Briggs.
Since I didn't speak in the last one, I just wanted to thank this Councilmember Ghazi Edwin for bringing this forward, the sponsors and her co-sponsors, and also to the folks who have been here today sharing their stories and advocating for it. I'm fully in support of this. I think there's wisdom in taking time to make sure that we do the outreach with our community, with our business community, labor as well, just to make sure that folks really understand what this means and that we have full buy-in, because I think it's very sensible and reasonable and something that just benefits our community as a whole.
For me, everything that Councilmember Briggs just said. Further discussion? All in favor of DC1? Postponement. Thank you very much. All in favor of the postponement? Opposed? It is postponed. DC2 resolution recognizing Creative Washtenaw as a civic nonprofit organization operating in Ann Arbor for the purpose of obtaining a charitable gaming license. Moved by Councilmember Ackman, seconded by Councilmember Briggs. Discussion of DC2. Councilmember Ackman.
I just want to use this opportunity to talk about what this event is, and basically it's Creative Washtenaws benefit to celebrate the arts and creative industries in Washtenaw County. Neda Ulabi from NPR will be the MC, and one of the things that they're going to be doing at this meeting is recognizing the outstanding service of Deb Pollock, who is retiring. She recently announced her retirement. As many of us know, she's been a champion for arts and the creative industries for over 30 years in our community, so part of it will be recognizing her, and so I'd just like to extend my gratitude for her work in this community, and hopefully some people can show up to this event.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. DC3 resolution for county millage rebate use. Co-sponsors will move to postpone until October 7, 2024. Moved by Councilmember Briggs, seconded by Councilmember Harrison. Discussion, please, of DC3. For my part, I'd like to, before postponing, I want to say very briefly, as folks know, back in and has been recounted a public comment, in 2017, Council passed a use resolution providing assurance to the voters that Council intended to use the rebate associated with this millage that goes to policing jurisdictions, would use those millage monies for community priorities that were then underfunded. The building of affordable housing, the accomplishment of our climate action plan, and the promotion of pedestrian safety. With the success of the millage over the past number of years and our friends at the County Board of Commissioners bringing the millage forward again to the voters this time in November 2024, it is useful for us, proper for us, to describe to the voters how the council intends to use millage monies that will come back to it as a policing jurisdiction in the form of a rebate. Those monies coming back to the city are entirely unallocated. They can be used for any purpose. The monies collected for the millage that for public safety are indeed directed to public safety. The monies collected under the millage for the purpose of mental health are indeed directed to mental health. These monies are intended by the millage language and the millage authors to be directed back to jurisdictions that have police departments in unallocated form. That's coming back to us, and it's going to be in the neighborhood of about $3 million a year. The co-sponsors and I are eager, and I hope that members of the public and council as well, to continue to support and advance areas of public interest that are indeed presently underfunded. 20% to advance pedestrian safety, 40% to fund supportive services for the residents of Ann Arbor Housing Commission properties, and 40%, broadly speaking, to advance and work a program of unarmed response. In anticipation of the creation and the development of that armed response program, the language in the use resolution would permit the city to hold on to monies anticipating such a program for the creation of seed capital. This, I think, is proper for us to communicate to the voters so that they will know how the council intends to use these monies going forward. It's worth noting that the use resolution is not binding, unlike some other contexts. It is, however, in my view, and as has been demonstrated in some of the wars we've had over former 40-40-20 resolutions, it is in my view a true and earnest promise to the voters of how this council will continue to vote if the voters conclude to entrust the council with monies that will come to the millage through their authorization of the millage. Further discussion. Councilmember Harrison.
Thank you, Mayor. This resolution addresses urgent community needs by allocating funds for vital services that directly impact the well-being of Ann Arbor residents. The Ann Arbor Housing Commission provides affordable housing to some of our most vulnerable populations, with over 60% of residents living with a disability. By funding critical supportive services like mental health care, eviction prevention, and job training, we help residents maintain stable housing and reduce the demand for emergency responses by connecting them with caseworkers and social services in advance of a crisis. If we're spending the capital to build housing, then we should be doing everything we can to ensure residents feel safe and supported in their homes. Providing stable housing is just one part of the equation. To truly foster a resilient and thriving community, we need to offer services that support mental health, conflict resolution, and daily living skills. The Ann Arbor Housing Commission has created a proven model of success through its partnerships with local nonprofits, and by funding these services, we are committing to the well-being and long-term safety of the people living in them. The percentage allocation in this proposal is essential to its success. While unarmed crisis response is crucial, it alone cannot address the root causes of many emergencies. By allocating 40% of the funds to supportive services for the Ann Arbor Housing Commission residents, we are taking a preventative approach. These services like mental health care, addiction treatment, and conflict resolution helped to avert a crisis before they require an emergency response. Without this funding, we would be placing a Band-Aid over the problem rather than tackling it at its source. It's also important to note that the Ann Arbor Housing Commission residents already have trusted relationships with caseworkers and social workers who are trained in trauma-informed care. This funding ensures that these critical relationships remain intact and reduces the need for emergency interventions. It's essential to allocate these funds now, ahead of the budget season, so residents can see the clear direction we're taking. We are prioritizing unarmed crisis response, public safety, and supportive services, all of which align with the values of Ann Arbor residents. By ensuring that services like those offered by the Ann Arbor Housing Commission are funded, we are not only addressing immediate needs, but also leading the way in creating a safer, more compassionate future for everyone in our community. Thank you.
Further discussion? In the absence of discussion, perhaps we could have an amendment to remove the bracketed language from the title prior to it coming back. Is there a second? Is that friendly? The bracketed language in the title is removed. Now, perhaps can we have a motion to postpone until our first meeting in October? Moved by Councilmember Harrison, seconded by Councilmember Dean. Is there discussion? All in favor? All opposed? It is indeed postponed. Do we have the pleasure today of a closed session?
No, thank you, Mayor.
We have before us the clerk's report of communications, petitions, and referrals. May I have a motion, please, to approve the clerk's report? Moved by Councilmember Cornell, seconded by Councilmember Iyer. Discussion of the clerk's report. Councilmember Dish.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a series of 5 pretty succinct questions and one comment that I would like to address to the attorneys about E2, which is the clerk's report on the Fair Elections Fund petition initiative and the letter that we received, the letter that was received from the Attorney General's office.
Thank you, Councilmember. Mr. Thomas is here to address your questions.
Oh, thank you. Okay. So isn't it true that the Attorney General's letter assists the governor in the governor's statutory review of all proposed charter amendments? And in that capacity, the Attorney General finds that the proposed amendment would conflict with the State Uniform Budgeting and Accounting Act. It is therefore not consistent with the Home Rule City Act.
Correct. The Home Rule City Act requires the governor to review all proposed charters and any charter amendments that come before any Home Rule City. And traditionally, the governor has forwarded those on to the Attorney General to advise her in that review of the amendments. Here, the Attorney General, in the Attorney General's opinion, that this proposed amendment, the Fair Election Fund, conflicted with the, like you said, the Uniform Budgeting Act, and was therefore runs afoul of the Home Rule Cities Act requirement that any charter amendment be consistent with state law.
Thank you. And then isn't it also true that there's a second finding which derives from the Attorney General's own statutory role to evaluate the proposed ballot language for conformity with the Section 21 of the Home Rule Cities Act, which governs requirements for ballot language? And isn't it true that the Attorney General finds that the language is incomplete because it doesn't disclose that lack of conformity with state law?
Correct, yeah. Like the governor's responsibility under the Home Rule Cities Act, the Attorney General has a separate responsibility to review the ballot language that's going to be on the ballot, to see if it's accurate, if it's under 100 words, if it's not biased one way or the other. And in that review, the Assistant Attorney General responsible for this amendment found that because he found it's preempted by state law, that the ballot language as proposed is not accurate.
Thank you. Actually, you just summed up, so I'll go on to 3. So I want to make sure that people listening understand the conflict between the proposal and state law. So isn't it true that the precise conflict is that the initiative requires a specific annual budget appropriation to create and maintain the Fair Election Fund?
That's correct. The Attorney General, in the Attorney General's opinion, the statute at issue here requires an annual appropriation by the city legislative body, city council in this case, annually. And because this proposed charter amendment would require the expenditure of funds, the Attorney General thought that, in his opinion, it conflicted with, it was preempted by that state law.
Okay.
Councilmember, you're at your 3 minutes. Is there anyone else who wishes to discuss the clerk's report? And then perhaps, Councilmember, if your second go around, but before we see that. At this time, no further discussion of the clerk's report. Councilmember Dish.
Thank you. Isn't it true that the city clerk was obligated to certify this ballot language, which it turns out is not accurate, because the petitions were submitted very close to the certification deadline?
That's correct. I believe, I'm not sure exactly when they were submitted, I believe in late July. And the clerk was obligated to certify all ballot language to the county clerk August 13th this year.
And finally, isn't it true that the governor's office sent out a letter asking for municipalities to submit proposed charter amendments at least 60 days prior to the certification deadline?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Further discussion of the clerk's report? Councilmember Briggs.
I don't have any questions for. I would just like to make a comment that, just to anybody who's watching, to make that clear, that this, I encourage folks to read the letter that's attached to E2. It clearly says that this ballot proposal does not meet state law, and I encourage voters to vote no.
Further discussion? Councilmember Rubino.
I perhaps have one question for the city clerk. Was the initiator of the petition notified of the request from the governor's office to submit the signature, or submit the petition language with enough time for review?
Yes, the current state law doesn't necessarily match up to the requested 60-day review period, so we would still accept petitions. There's also a separate provision that we have 45 days to check the signatures and make the certification. So we do give petitioners a recommended timeline that incorporates the review period as well as the governor's requested review.
Thank you. I think for that reason, I think it's also important to note that the circulators of this petition were aware of the recommended deadlines that were not met. And as a result, we are now in this position where, unfortunately, this, despite being in conflict with state law per the Attorney General's office, we're required to put it to voters. And I would just like to express my concern that should Proposal D, in this case the Ann Arbor Fair Election Fund, pass this November, it will immediately send the city into likely costly litigation, whether the city enforces it or doesn't. So if voters ask us to enforce it, we would be going against an Attorney General opinion if we did so, and if we don't, I expect that we will be sued for not enforcing it. And so either way, if this were to pass, the city is going to be embroiled in a lawsuit, and so I would also encourage a no vote.
Further discussion of the clerk's report, as we will. All in favor? Opposed? The clerk's report is approved. Do we have the pleasure of communications from our city attorney?
No, thank you, Mayor.
In the absence of public comment overflow, may I have a motion to adjourn, please? Moved by Councilmember Cornell, second by Councilmember Ackman. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? We're adjourned.